Okay, so we're gonna see how much storage space I have and if you'll even be able to hear this because, yeah, we're having some limitations, of course, with the audio probably. But, okay, I come to you with this jumbled little assortment here because there's a point. um, so yesterday the question was posed to me in a legal arena, we'll say. Has anyone here been accused of something they didn't do? Now, in the moment, what came to my mind was, even though there have been multiple times that I've been accused of something that I didn't do, it's kind of sad and maybe cute in a way, that one that really sticks out to me is years and years later, like when I was in fourth grade. Here's our little story time. I was a huge little, like, quiet, meek person and very nerdy, very much like I did not want to be seen as bad or anything, and I would never, at this particular point in my life, have ever thought about cheating in class or anything like that. I was just a huge nerd, and my teacher would get us to we'd have these little math problems we had to solve, and it would be like a little challenge, and it was like, okay, take everything off your desk, put your calculators away, I'm going to give you this problem, you have to solve it, and you have to show me your work. So I am working on this and diligently doing it, even though I kind of questioned my capabilities at the time. But I was working on it, and then my teacher is like, okay, time's up, and comes around and is checking all of our answers and our work. And she gets to mine, and keep in mind, again, I'm a kid that like would never cause trouble. I never thought of cheating. I always did what I was supposed to. Well, she she sits there for a moment, and then she is like, okay, can I see you in the hall? And so she takes me out to the hall, and she's having this chat with me about, like, tell me the truth, you used your calculator. And I'm just baffled at this moment. I'm just like, no. And she said, you did, you used you how did you get the right answer? And I was like, well, I worked on it, and I got the answer. And come to find out, I had the right answer, but my work, it was just, I guess the way that I did it was not right, but somehow I got the correct answer. So she just knew that I had to have used a calculator, and just the look of disappointment on her face was like, especially because I adored this teacher, and it just made me so sad that she would think that I cheated. And so, of course, like, long story short, I guess short-ish, I didn't get the candy, because we'd get candy if we got the right answer, but apparently because my work was wrong, she just knew that I cheated. And it was like one of those feelings of she was never going to look at me the same way again, even though she was thinking I did that, but I didn't. And like sometimes that'll come into my mind, but just yesterday that really struck a chord with me when that question came up. And later after that, when I was telling someone about it, they basically had said, well, I'm sure they meant like in a legal sense. Well, that doesn't matter so much as that's what came to my mind. And sorry, I'm getting a message about my storage space. Anyway, that's what came to my mind. And there's a reason for that. There's some kind of purpose in things. And that's following your intuition. Is in that moment, that is all that mattered. Is that's what came to my mind. And it excluded me from what we were being asked for. And that's okay, because I would have felt worse had I not been honest about that. So, hopefully you can still hear me. But anywho, and so that's why I come to you with this, because it illustrates that point. I am not going to show you a clean, neat, kind of linear pattern here, and tell you how I got to the answer. It's like we might get the same answer, but our work is very different. That doesn't mean you're quote unquote cheating. That means that you have gone about a different process and yet you came to the same answer. So maybe this message here isn't quite as important as what you arrive at isn't as important as what you do to get there. This is also, I've been working on like crochet recently, and I've had to learn that like me learning the process is much more important than me having a product. Excuse me. The final product is not as important as the process, the learning, the knowledge you gain from being willing to say, okay, if I'm not happy with it, I'm just going to pull it apart and just start again. And that's okay. That's sort of what you get from the tower is, do you want to just keep building something to build and to make something, to have something that will be faulty? Or do you want to start it again with the knowledge and the resources that you need in order to get what it is that you're truly searching for? And I see this in this as well, because like there's a lot of stuff about energy and flow, and especially here too with like what you're waiting for. Some people will only see, they'll see like, well, you don't have all this and this and that, and it's because maybe you had the same skein of yarn and you just kept practicing, going, I'm not happy with that, pulling it apart. I'll start again. That's okay. I'm going in this direction now. I don't really like it. You're putting in that work, and maybe someone doesn't see that you have a ton of products, like physical products, to show them you have something invisible to them. You have the knowledge that you've gleaned from that, and that is so much more important. That brings so much more clarity, and it's more about like, what have you learned as opposed to what do you produce? And just giving yourself that grace and allowing yourself to make mistakes and figure out like, maybe you did go about something in a different way. Maybe you do want to learn like a different way, but not beating yourself up for it. And again, learning to listen to messages from within and being in the moment, as opposed to like what people are going to say about it after. That's kind of like when people say, oh, my blunders from blah blah blah. Sometimes you were so happy in that moment that you didn't care what people were going to think about it 10, 20, 30 years from now. Like maybe by today's standards, whatever you were wearing or your hair or whatever, maybe someone's going to laugh about it. But in that moment, you were happy. You were like vibing. You were just doing your thing. You were loving your life. You were living. You were too busy living to think about that product that was going to be available like years from now. Like, oh, I had such silly hair back then. But you were enjoying life. You had friends. You were doing things you loved. You were enjoying your life. And that's okay. It's okay if like, I'm not saying that's to excuse like hurting people, but like things change, and like we learn different ways, and we learn from our mistakes, and we can't be so obsessed with how we appear that we forget to just be, and don't want to like crucify someone else for a small mistake or something that was like they did that was silly. That, you know, of course, once you get new knowledge, you need to adapt and change, but also if you like whatever standards you hold for others, that's what you need to be prepared to accept for yourself as well. And that's why I feel like it's very important to have that grace and extend that. And, you know, so hopefully this has kind of made a little bit of sense, but I also see this is important too, because like our Page of Pentacles there is about going from sort of a classroom environment and taking those skills that you've learned and applying it to life. And you're never going to get anywhere. You're going to be so stuck and gridlocked and like have this energy that's frozen if you're too afraid to make any moves. And just allow yourself that and extend that to others when possible as well. And I think that's important too with our justice. It's like, it's not saying to not hold people accountable. It's to be willing to allow for growth and change with correction, sort of like gentle correction, and, you know, allowing for mistakes. Of course, people need to grow and make their changes, but just don't get too bogged down in that, and be willing to stick up for yourself and understand what's important and what needs protecting, and being courageous and dancing. don't let yourself be like, oh, I don't know, because they know that's so cheesy, that's lame, that's what. If you enjoy it, you enjoy it. If you're not hurting somebody, who cares? Like, whatever. We've all had some kind of silly hairstyle, and everybody, like, every trend that we think is cool now, in 15-20 years everyone's gonna be laughing about it again. So whatever. But I hope that you are doing well wherever you are, and keep on dancing and learning. And if someone else can't appreciate that, understand that that's probably because they can't appreciate that within themselves at the moment. And hey, that's okay. That's the way it goes. But I will leave you with this. The other day I also came to a realization, which has happened many times. Sometimes we have to hear the same thing over and over again, whether it's from another or within our own mind, our own intuition telling us. Who determines what is a weed and what is a flower? And so just hope you have an awesome everything. So see y'all.